Welcome to the Everyman Tales. I'm so glad that you joined me today. I am Everyman, and I'm going to be your storyteller. And these stories are intended for bedtime, road trips, adventures, family time, and every time in between. They're intended for any age and every mind. Get ready to engage your imagination. Get ready for the Everyman Tales. A simple hike through the woods has turned into an adventure that Titus never could have imagined. A few steps, a creaking board, a free fall through a vacant mine shaft, and now Titus, with his flashlight in one hand and his pocket knife in his other, was traveling down an empty, abandoned mine shaft tunnel, not knowing where it would lead, but hoping and praying that it would somehow lead to an exit so that not only could he get home, but he could get home in time for dinner. He was extremely hungry, but the fear and concern that was surrounding him in his current totally unpredicted situation had eliminated all thoughts of making it home in time for dinner. Now, Titus was just hoping he could find an exit to the mine shaft. The tunnel he traveled down, as he explored it with his flashlight and every cautious step, was full of all kinds of things that in a normal situation he would take the time to investigate. There was an occasional board on the ground, oddly shaped rocks, roots sticking out from the edge of the abandoned mine tunnel, and things that normally would have really attracted a young man his age. But now, all he was thinking of was getting home safely. Step after step, yard after yard, as he kept looking behind him, he saw the remnants of the light from the shaft he had fallen through and realized it was getting darker and darker behind him, with no sign of light in front of him. He reached a point where the tunnel did an odd thing. He never would have thought this was even possible. It began to curve. He wasn't aware that mine shafts even curved. He was under the presumption that they all traveled at perfect 90-degree angles. But it began to curve to the left. And while there were no spider webs in front of him, there were things that were across his path at times. They weren't spider webs, but they felt more like they were tied there, put there. They were fishing line feeling filaments that he would simply break through and nothing would happen. It wasn't a scenario where things would pop out of the wall or shoot at him. He just seemed to break through them one by one, and they were randomly placed. After he made it all the way around the first curve to the left, he turned around. There was no light behind him and no light in front of him. Titus placed his feet in front of each other and kept walking at a brisk pace. Every once in a while, he would stop and listen to see if he could hear a wind blowing or water trickling. But right now, he heard nothing but total dead silence. He had gone so far that when he began to look at the actual tunnel itself, something unique had happened, not just to the direction it curved, but to the tunnel itself. At first, when he started down it, it was a rectangular shape, about a good 1.5 or 2 feet above his head and 3 to 4 feet in each direction to the right and left. He noticed, however, after the curve, that it had become cylindrical. The floor he was walking on was still flat, but it had become a curved tunnel, and it seemed to be getting larger. The circumference was further above his head and further to the right and left than the original entrance to the tunnel had started. The items, the rocks, all the roots sticking out from the edges of the wall had all disappeared. Everything in his path in front of him was smooth and undisturbed, and the walls were perfectly circular with nothing sticking out from them. And the further he went, the larger the circle of the tunnel became. It began a sharp curve to the right. After going for quite a while after the first curve to the left, it went in a straight direction. Now he was about to turn right very sharply. And when he did, he thought he saw light at the end of the tunnel. He picked up his pace, realizing that as he was getting closer and closer to what he saw as light at the end, then that could be an exit that would lead him home. He began to smell something. It almost smelled like like fresh cut grass. No, not fresh cut grass. Growing grass and trees. He wasn't sure what it was, but he knew that he was glad to be coming to the end of his tunnel. He came to the edge of the bright light and stepped into a large cavern. He was excited at first, but then as he looked, he saw he was not exiting the tunnel at all. It had simply become larger, wider, grander. And now he saw a running river. He had no idea a river this size was near his house. He looked up into the sky, or at least where the sky should be, and saw a roof hundreds of feet above him with glowing stones that were providing the light that he thought was the end of the tunnel. He actually was what was inside something he had studied in school. It looked like what he thought was called a geode, a huge rock that when you broke it open was full of crystals on the inside. But that would be impossible. There's no way he could be inside of a rock. Then he thought about it for a moment and realized that's kind of exactly what a tunnel is. But inside this one, there was water and there were plants. And where the light came from was not bright sunshine light. It was an iridescent glow, a light green tone that colored everything within his field of vision. He looked back down the tunnel, black and dark, and there was nothing there. He looked in front of him and realized somewhere on the other side of the vast landscape in front of him, there may very well be another exit, but at least for now, there was water and perhaps something to eat. Titus knew that through the long hike through the tunnel, dinner time had come and gone, but he knew he had to find his exit. He started walking through the field, and an eerie feeling came over him. It was peace. He wasn't afraid. He felt like he was somewhere safe. He thought he heard something in the undergrowth. There were bushes. There were even trees. The river was not the only thing that seemed to be living in this new vast landscape he had found. The crystals above and on the sides, hundreds of feet to the right, thousands of feet it seemed to the left, and they were all crystals amplifying a light source of some kind, but he could not figure out where it was coming from. Eventually he came to the edge of the water, and he noticed it was not the color you would expect water to be. It wasn't green, the tone of the light all around him. It wasn't blue. He looked at it, and it seemed to be a light lavender. The water was lavender colored. It was almost purplish. He was amazed. He thought he may have bumped his head on the fall and that his vision was obscured, but what he saw was indeed what he saw. A green-tinted landscape full of plants, a purple river flowing through it, and a green light illuminating everything he could see. But now he had a new problem. How was Titus going to cross the Lavender River? And the question still nagged at his mind. Where was he? And where could the exit to this new world he had found be? And that's exactly what he set out to find. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Everyman Tales. I'm Everyman, and don't forget to like and follow the podcast on whatever service you're listening on. I also have a Facebook page. Just search for the Everyman Tales podcast, and you can like the page there as well. Comment and send me suggestions if you're so inclined. And for now, it's time to say goodbye. But in between stories, I just want to remind you to get ready to engage your imagination and always be ready for the next Everyman Tale.